Broadcasting live from the Trichomes.com studios in Southern California. It's time for your Morning Buzz. We bring you late-breaking news that keeps you up to date with what's happening in the cannabis industry.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Trichomes Morning Buzz. It's Tuesday, May 17th, and here are your top cannabis headlines. First up, Justice Department tells Supreme Court to reject a marijuana case while acknowledging legalization momentum. A congressman urges Transportation Department to reform a marijuana testing policy for drivers, and a congressman says there's tremendous momentum to pass marijuana banking and bicameral conference on manufacturing bill. Before I go in the head pods, because I know that we've got some traffic noise in the background, I'm going to go ahead and make sure we're good setting wise. Good morning to everybody that's on the show with us. I'm really glad that you're here. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button attached, and we're going straight in to the first headline here. First one up is Justice Department tells the Supreme Court to reject marijuana case while acknowledging legalization momentum. And this is a big one today. In the Justice Department is telling the Supreme Court that it should not take up a case concerning workers' compensation for medical marijuana that could have a wide-ranging implications related to federal supremacy. And part of its reasoning is that Congress appears to be moving towards a solution on its own as lawmakers work to end federal prohibition. The question before the court arose out of a pair of Minnesota cases where workers had sought compensation for medical cannabis from their employers after being injured on the job. In both instances, the state Supreme Court ruled that the federal law prohibiting marijuana preempted state law, meaning the employers are not obligated to pay for that medicine. But plaintiffs and advocacy groups like Empire State Normal are making the case that because employers aren't required to possess, manufacture, or distribute cannabis in a contravention of federal law, simply providing workers compensation for marijuana is not preempted by the Controlled Substances Act. Let's see. The petition in these cases, which present a novel question in a rapidly evolving area of law, do not warrant the court's review, the DOJ said, adding, when a federal law such as the CSA prohibits possession of a particular item, it preempts state law requiring a private party to subsidize the purchase of that item. The decisions below, however, rest on a more complex rationale than unnecessarily explores the scope of federal aiding and abetting liability outside of the context of any federal prosecution. Let's see here. From the Justice Department's perspective, a law order that compels third parties to directly subsidize petitioners' possession of marijuana on a medical use rationale would amount to overriding legislative intent, consistent with the CSA, they said. Quote unquote, if states could enforce laws compelling third parties to subsidize federal crimes, they could directly undermine the congressional determinations. For example, no legal principle would preclude a state from requiring a private employer to reimburse the use of drugs, the use of other federally prohibited drugs or substances such as LSD or psychedelic drugs based upon perceived benefits. The conflict with the CSA remains, however, when Minnesota law compels private employers to subsidize the same federal crimes. So what they're saying is rather than go ahead and rule on this now, because of the fact that legalization seems to be on its way in some form or fashion, decriminalization, the DOJ is rejecting the case, saying, let's see how this plays out in the votes here coming up shortly. So that seems to be a little bit of a preemptive statement when it comes down to, what it is that's going on. Let's see here. Having a little bit of a slow internet day. Next one up, we have the the Transportation Department here. And really, we had talked about this before. We're talking about it in terms of testing police officers and public safety and that kind of stuff. So here's a story coming up where a congressman urges Transportation Department to reform marijuana testing policies for drivers. And this is a big deal because there's a lot of drivers that are unemployed based upon your analysis and the current way the things are being tested. So the U.S. Department of Transportation, the DOT, policies on drug testing truckers and other commercial drivers for marijuana are not unnecessarily costing people their jobs and contributing to supply chain issues. Uh, Republican Earl Blumenauer cited DOT data showing that tens of thousands of drivers are being disqualified because of stringent drug screening policies around THC. He said that while nobody wants drivers impaired on the road, there aren't tests that can detect active impairment. So people are being penalized for using cannabis while off duty days or weeks before they're tested. These disqualifications deny people the right to earn a living, reduce the workforce when drivers are desperately needed, and penalize people of color and patients who legally use medical cannabis, he wrote. This crisis must be treated with urgency. Let's see. The congressman told Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, yes, that his department should rapidly reform requirements for testing drivers and returning them to service, as well as developing an accurate test for impairment. Well, let's see. Blumenauer said that statistics on drivers who have been disqualified over positive THC tests are troubling on their own, but the true impacts of this policy are likely greater, given that many people will self-select out of the profession, knowing that drug testing requirements. And it goes on to be quoted. Onerous requirements for returning to duty after a positive test also mean most of these drivers will never return to work. Out of the 119,000 drivers prohibited from driving over the past 3 years, more than half of them have not even attempted to return. The Department of Transportation's current policies towards the drivers contributes to the supply chain backlogs and the delays in critical deliveries over the American economy. All right, let's see. Current department mandates urine testing, which advocates and experts view as problematic because the THC metabolites can stay in a person's system for weeks after they've used cannabis. But a proposed rule change would allow for saliva-based tests as an alternate option. Depending on the frequency of use, THC is generally detectable in saliva anywhere from 1 to 24 hours after use. Further, the DOT proposal says that there would be a 4 nanogram per milliliter screening test cutoff for THC, which would detect the use of marijuana while eliminating the possibilities of a positive test resulting from passive exposure. So, meaning that secondhand smoke wouldn't be a determinable reason. Let's see. This is from the Congressman's newsletter. To date, 48 states have enacted laws to varying degrees, relaxing their prohibitions against the use of marijuana. Nevertheless, your department's zero tolerance policy sweeps up drivers who are unimpaired driving, drivers who have not used cannabis for weeks or even months, and drivers who have used federally legal CBD oils. This is a big deal, and the fact that we're talking about it now is really something. I know it's affected people that watch and view with us regularly, so we'll go ahead and come back to that. Yeah, I mean, it goes on a little bit more to go in on the government and what that's about. But let's see here. Next up, we've got another congressman urging on the safe banking, saying that we've got tremendous momentum. Here we go. Here's the story. Congressman says that there's tremendous momentum to pass marijuana banking in bicameral conference on manufacturing bill. And let's see. Republican Earl Blumenauer, a longstanding champion of cannabis legalization, who is serving as a conferee on the American Competes Act, talked about the state of play and steps he's taking to secure the banking language during a press conference Monday. He said that there's a concerted effort among conferees in both chambers to make sure that the House passed the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act is attached to the final conference report that's sent back to the president's desk. And while Senate leadership is yet to see the issue, he's confident that the bicameral panel will seal the deal. There's a strong base support among the conferees for keeping this marijuana banking language in and enacting it. We think this is the perfect opportunity to get some actual movement on this. We've got a vehicle that needs to be acted upon relatively soon. There's broad support for it, and the Congressional Cannabis Caucus co-chair said, who led the late leadership last month, that stressed the urgency for enacting bank reform. I think there's tremendous momentum. Representative Maxine Waters from California, who chairs the House Financial Services Committee and previously listed marijuana banking as legislative priority ahead of the conference, said the bipartisan nature of the reform proposal is evident based upon the fact that the House included the chamber's version of the manufacturing bill before it was removed in the Senate. Additionally, nearly a quarter of all senators sent a bipartisan letter last week urging that cannabis banking be included in the final bill. The third highest ranking Democratic member of the Senate, Senator Patty Murray from Washington, has taken special interest in the marijuana banking reform, describing it as a priority of hers as an appointed member of the bicameral conference committee. She said last week, so we can all come to an agreement to keep safe banking in our final bill so that cannabis stores in all states like mine do not have to operate entirely in cash. Remember, she was the senator whose state they just recently had a couple robberies and I do believe deaths surrounding that. The standalone Senate version of the Safe Banking Act currently has 42 co-sponsors, including 9 Republicans. That reluctance on the Senate side was also subject of the letter the Safe Banking Act sponsor, Republican Ed Perlmutter, sent to the leadership last month. Let's see. Well, that's it. The last thing is, despite recently saying that he's confident the Senate bill will take up this, that the Senate will take up this bill, the session, Perlmutter recognized that he's supportive of revisions related to criminal justice reform, taxation, research, and other issues. He knows that as we expand this thing, then we start losing votes, particularly Republican votes, and we got enough votes in the Senate to do this as is. So they're looking to push this forward as is, the way it is at the moment. Let's see here. We're getting to the chat, and it's popping already. Thank you, guys. Good morning. Danny Tomlin, Little Mac 86, Joey Riolano, Danny Tomlin, Timothy's DeMattis. Good to see you guys, everybody here. Let's see, did I miss anybody down forward? And Wicked Smart, morning. Good morning, everybody. Let's see here. I'm going to take this moment to check in on the Trichomes community app as well. And by the way, if you haven't signed up for that, you know, we continue the conversation here. We are live in the morning. And let's see here. Good morning to those in the Trichomes live. What is your pH? Deadlife 48. Good to see you. Good to see you this morning. Deadlife 48. When are they voting on all that stuff? Well, when are they voting on all this stuff? Boils down to the fact that we've got this the America Competes Act that's being voted on here shortly. It'll be going to the floor. I don't know the specific date. We will look that up. You know, I'll make a note for that. America Competes date. So we can look that up and get that to you, but it'll be on the floor when they are voting on the American Competes Act, just to answer your question directly. Don't know what that date is going to be yet. So heading back to the top of the comments on YouTube, we got a bunch of good mornings, and thank you guys. Great morning. I left the window shades open a little bit because we've got some overcast, which helps with the lighting situation. Let's see. Danny Tomlin, just wish the feds would get on with it. Legalize and be done. They should realize the war on cannabis is over. Cannabis wins, game over. Right? Now, the problem with that is, you know, really you've got more drugs involved with this, and you know, it's you've got to pay attention again to those horses in front of the cart and make sure not to run them over. The way our laws are currently in the federal system and that kind of thing, they overlap, and so I'm certain that a lot of what we are waiting on has to do with rewriting some of these laws surrounding research and not just for the purpose of cannabis, but for other drugs, illicit drugs that people, would use these loopholes to get through on. So yeah, we're waiting. Let's see. Um, but you're absolutely right. Cannabis has won the war on its particular drugs. It's won that battle on the war on drugs. That's for sure. Let's see. Danny Tomlin, imprisonment laws need changed. Absolutely. And also, they were trying to legalize it, but still find ways to make more laws against it. And divided, we have foul. Divided, we have foul. Excuse me. Let's see. Danny Tomlin says, "I can't drive without it. I get nervous." Hey, it does calm quite a few nerves for people that are going through it. So let's see here. Like you said, Wicked Smart. Honestly, they're making it more difficult than it needs to be. That's absolutely the case. When it boils down to it, um, what we discussed, I guess, last week when Steve Hawkins was on, was that a couple of these initial bills, they're so all inclusive and they have so many details to them that they're going over and so many different points of interest of which other people can contend and contest. And really, had we started off at a decriminalized, stance, as well as, well, not even decriminalized that, excuse me, get people out of prison stance, and basically a safe banking act to keep people safe, it would have been a little bit more clear and cut. But within the different acts that are being presented and that kind of thing, there are a lot more details that different, well, I guess the partisan, um, the partisan issues or the partisan parties have issues with, and that's really where we're getting stuck up on is a bunch of these these little ticky tacky type, points within the laws, within the acts, that essentially, either party wants to be heard, either party wants to have a say in what's going on. And when you're talking about 20 different bullet points rather than one or two things, it just gets a lot more convoluted. Would have been a lot easier to start the conversation off 18 months ago with just talking about safe banking and getting people out of prison. I think we would have been a lot more support for two individual bills that looked a lot more at um, the plant only offenses and non-violent offenses, rather than going through this whole sweeping type of reform. But that's the tough part. Ray Brock, Biden lied about being for cannabis. Well, can't disagree with that comment right at the moment. It's at this juncture, thinking, he said he thinks it should be decriminalized, and people shouldn't be in prison for it. And we're 2.5 years into this, and the first move he made was pardoning some low-level drug offenses, and it wasn't just even cannabis, and it didn't have to do with cannabis reform. So really, the moves he's making towards cannabis specifically are little, if nothing, if not nothing. There we go. Timothy DeMatteis, if you can't stop it, at least slow it down. That's politics. Something around here on the local level is it's TBD used to stand for to be determined. When you're talking about cannabis, politics, and licensing, I have switched that acronym to be delayed. To be delayed is now TBD. Such is life when cannabis is your life, right? Doesn't matter what you're talking about, it will be delayed. So, Little Mac 86, Clinton, Obama, and Biden lied about cannabis reform. Never trust a presidential campaign promise. They've all kind of sided with the growing popular opinion, as they were going into it. And yeah, and realistically, it seems that you're dealing with a lot of political pandering, and ultimately, it's you don't trust it. It's what was it? I think it was a Bush thing that I heard way back when. But trust yet verify, and within that verify, it's okay, great. You want criminal decriminalization, you want reform. Well, how are you going to go about that? Let's just get past the the words aspect of it. Let's get into what actions are you going to take. And no one's been held accountable to that. No one's been had that brought up in the beginning when they were talking about these different things. So now it's one of those deals where we definitely have to hold the next round accountable to this. Let's see. I'm going to check in on the app here. um, the ugly farmer. The banking thing is sad. During the pure prohibition of cannabis, we opened up the business to wash our money. Now we're trying to do the legal route, and they want to make it impossible. Right? It's one of those things as to where, again, we've talked about it on the California level. We've talked about it on the federal level as to where it, this it seems like there's somewhat of an extinction event going on where they're trying to switch out the legacy growers and the legacy providers for the people who are coming to cannabis now with new money and that kind of thing. It's getting tougher every day for the legacy providers to hold on. So can't really disagree with what you're saying. Let's see, Manny 23. Thanks for checking in. Good to see you from over there. Smoke and mirrors. That's yep. What is your pH? Smoke and mirrors. Politics seems to be a lot like that. You'd think that we were the ones with most of the smoke and mirrors, given our choice of what we like to do for medical and or recreational. But yep, they're using it against us. The smoke and mirrors, bastards. Let's see here. So Danny Tomlin, there's so much to fix from the government's mess up on cannabis. It's been many years of them keeping a lie about it, then letting the truth out, and them realizing they have to fix it. You're absolutely correct. Right now, you're dealing with um, the fallout of all the preaching and all the bad mouthing that's gone on over the last 50 plus years here in our current situation and the outlawing thereof of cannabis. Um, and really having to wind it down, having to back out of what they originally said was wrong with cannabis, and all of the scientific findings done under their guide or guise, and have to be walked backwards. And that's literally, I think a little bit of still what they're trying to figure out is how to do that while saving face, thinking there's face to save. There isn't. They just have to realize that they've been part of the regime that was on the wrong side of it, and now to be on the right side of history, they have to enable this for the people in their states, for uh, medical policies, legal excuse me, nationally. Is again, this is something where medical cannabis is no longer an issue of whether people want it or not. It's 90% plus. I think there was just a recent poll about Texas, and it was taken on a small survey, 1,500 people or so, but 90% of people from Texas resonated with the fact that medical marijuana should be there. 60% still think that recreational marijuana should be there. That's, we're talking about one of the most staunch holdout states who's basically holding out because of their leaders' political views, not because of the people who live there, and not because of what they want. The people who live in Texas, and this is really what we're fighting against on the overall level, state by state. You've seen more local municipalities, listen as things were going on, and you've seen more things become legal. You've seen more states go on medically, and now a lot more states come on recreationally. But when it comes down to it, is you have the holdout states and the federal people sitting there and holding position based on the fact that essentially, they've got things to lose, and that's where a lot of the special interests come into play. So let's see here. Wicked smart. What's funnier, foreign education systems teach their kids about propaganda campaigns done in the US state as to not repeat our failures. It's probably a pretty decent education there that they're getting. And Danny Tomlin, I'm with you. Texas, keep fighting. See, Ray Brock. Remember, under Nixon, the Democrats were over Congress and gave it to Nixon. When he signed it, both parties were at fault. Um, I'm a little less versed on what that is, what you're talking about there, but basically, until now, the ball's been dropped on pretty much every level. So I'll go ahead and agree with you. And if Danny says you're right, I'm going to have to go with Danny. Little Mac 86, Flavor Flav said it best. Don't believe the hype. Absolutely. And remember that as we're getting into these waning moments of the last little bit before these midterms, and you have all these local politicians posturing up. Make sure that they have a plan for it. Make sure that it's not just lip service and you're not being drawn in for one last vote in a way to keep them in office. So again, verify what's going on. Look at their plan. Look at the fine print, because it's there, and the stuff you don't want is in there by and large. So getting a bill passed is great, unless three-quarters of it has to be walked back because it wasn't the right law. And you're seeing that, and I don't know that three-quarters of it's being walked back, but in California, between the taxes and between the ways that people can still get in trouble for it, especially the people between 18 and 21, I say kids, because uh, you know 18 to 21, they're still kids. I mean, you can go fight for our country 100%, but you can't smoke marijuana legally. As a matter of fact, you can get in more trouble for it. These laws have to make sense, or else we're still doing a detriment to some of the people who are most affected by it, which are younger kids and people who are going through things, whether it be mentally or physically or challenges in life. Cannabis, yeah, would be a better alternative than going and drinking themselves to death and doing that kind of thing. So we got to take a look at what these laws are before you pass them, and make sure in these upcoming elections that you're voting for the right people, that you're taking into account what their marijuana policies are, and really how they intend to implement them. So with that, yeah, we've got a lot on the horizon. We've got people talking about trucking laws, of which stuff like this, when it comes down to the transportation reform, marijuana testing policy for drivers, that's that does talk about that one specific subject, but it's also going to trickle down into things like we're talking about with the New Jersey police and people who are in public safety and that type of thing, being able to use and or not, right? So we'll see where this leads to. And then, the first story that we led with, as far as the Supreme Court rejecting the marijuana case, again, forward movement. We're looking at even the federal governments. We're looking at the Supreme Court acknowledging the fact that realistically, this is going to change soon. So why should we rule on it now? And that's another decent indicator. And again, going back on to the reference of tremendous momentum on the Safe Banking Act. Well, if it doesn't pass this time, we're going to have a few people to look at. We're going to have some people to question, and we're going to know who didn't vote for it this time. So let's make sure that we're paying attention, and we'll definitely be creating some lists here as the votes come around, making sure that everybody knows who voted for what, and then we go from there. But for right now, if you're in a state that doesn't have it, if you're looking to, like in Texas, where there's legalization, decriminalization, and all those type of things happening. I know Austin passed the decriminalization and no-knock warrants, and there's other local municipalities that are putting it on the ballot. Vote for it, get it out there, understand what you're voting for, and make sure that you are pressing with the local representatives and senators that are going to keep it on the ballot and keep fighting for what you are looking at, which is cannabis either decriminalized, medically available, or recreationally available. But as we've talked about before, if you're in a holdout state and there are no laws, medically seems to be one of the best ways to come about it. So remember, support those people who are supporting what you're about, and know that you control that with your vote. So go with the momentum. I hope everybody had a great day today, and I look forward to talking to you guys all tomorrow. We'll hope that there's a little bit more to talk about than just momentum, because again, sometimes the momentum can be deceiving just because it's a popular thing to talk about right now, and a lot of the local jurisdictions are talking about it because they know it's getting your attention, and as long as they're getting your attention, um, that's what their job is. So you got to take that attention and let them know that you want to see this through to fruition, and that comes in the form of phone calls and letters and voting with your local associations and people who are doing this for a living type deal. Anyway, I definitely want to say thank you for checking in. Remember to like and subscribe and share. It helps other people help join the conversation. I want to thank everybody on the app for joining and talking with us during this time period. And I want to remind everybody who's on YouTube that we do have the Trichomes community app. We'd love to see you on there. The conversation continues. We're aggregating content and news all the time. So we're up for discussion 24/7. This is just kind of one of those as to where we're looking to expand the community and really YouTube um, as a distribution source helps us get out there in front of people like you and everybody who's in the comments, which again I thank you all very much for being in the comments and being part of this discussion. It really helps illuminate a lot of things, not only on a overall level but on a state by state level. So thank you everybody for joining. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Be safe, be well. See you tomorrow.